My name is Alyssa Morgan. I am 34 years old, and I work in hospital operations, where problems are supposed to have clear protocols and clear solutions. But the morning everything changed, I got a phone call that did not follow any rules I understood. The voice on the other end was calm, almost too calm. "Good morning, Ms. Morgan. This is Officer Daniels. We need you to come to Lakeview Community Center immediately. 3 children were dropped off with a note saying you are responsible for them." I did not answer right away. I thought maybe I heard it wrong. Maybe he had the wrong number. Maybe there was another Alyssa Morgan somewhere who actually had children. I said, "I think there has been a mistake. I do not have kids." There was a pause, then the officer replied, "The note specifically names you." In that moment, something cold settled in my chest. Because I knew exactly who would write my name on something like that. My sister, Vanessa. Just 12 hours earlier, we were sitting at a family barbecue, and she had announced she was pregnant with her 4th child. Everyone celebrated. Everyone smiled. And then, without asking, without even pretending to ask, they decided I would be the one to help raise that baby. I said no. One simple word. Calm. Clear. Final. And somehow, by the next morning, that no had turned into a police report with my name attached to 3 abandoned children. So as I grabbed my keys and walked out the door, I realized this was no longer about family expectations. This was about how far they were willing to go to make sure my life never belonged to me. 12 hours before that call, everything still looked normal on the surface. We were in my parents' backyard, the kind of summer evening that feels easy. The grill was still warm, sweet tea sweating on the table, laughter floating through the air like nothing could go wrong. Vanessa stood up with one hand on her stomach and a smile that expected applause. "I have news," she said. "Baby number 4 is on the way." Everyone cheered. My mother clapped her hands. My father nodded with quiet approval. Jason raised his drink like he had just won something. And then, without a pause, the attention shifted. Not to how Vanessa was feeling. Not to how they would manage another child. To me. My mother turned with that soft voice she always used when she was not really asking. "Alyssa, you will help her out, right? Especially after the baby comes. She is going to need rest." It was not a question. It was an assignment. My father did not say anything, but his look carried the same message it always had. Do not make this difficult. I felt every eye at the table settle on me, waiting for the answer they had already decided. I set my glass down slowly and said, "Why me? That is not my responsibility." The silence was instant. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Vanessa laughed, but it was not a kind sound. "You are single. You do not have kids. Think of it as practice." Practice. Like my life was just preparation for hers. Jason leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Family helps family, Alyssa. That is just how it works." I could feel the pressure building, the familiar pull to give in, to smooth things over, to be the easy solution like I had always been before. But something in me refused this time. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I just stood up, picked up the dish I had brought, and said, "I am not doing this." Then the drive to Lakeview Community Center took less than 15 minutes, but it felt longer. My hands stayed steady on the wheel, but my mind kept replaying the same sentence. 3 children were dropped off with a note saying I was responsible. Not asked. Not confirmed. Just written down like it was already true. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw 2 police cars parked near the entrance. That was the first sign this was no longer a family issue. This was something official. Through the glass doors, I could already see them. Harper sat on a bench with her arms crossed, trying to look brave. Miles was crying quietly into his sleeve. And little Chloe was half asleep against a staff member who looked overwhelmed and exhausted. 3 backpacks were lined up neatly beside them, like evidence waiting to be claimed. I stepped inside and a man approached me. "Are you Alyssa Morgan?" I nodded. "I am Officer Daniels," he said, his voice calm but careful. He handed me a piece of paper. "This was left with the children." I looked down and felt something tighten in my chest. The handwriting was Vanessa's. Rounded, cheerful, completely detached from reality. "Alyssa agreed to watch the kids today. Family helps family. We will pick them up later." I stared at it for a long second, not because I was confused, but because I was not. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a setup. I unlocked my phone and pulled up my messages from the night before. I handed it to Officer Daniels. There was my mother telling me I would help. There was Vanessa saying I needed practice. And there was my reply. Clear. Direct. No room for interpretation. That is not my responsibility. I am not doing this. He read it, then looked back at the note. His expression shifted, subtle but important. This was no longer a family favor gone wrong. This was something else. I thought the worst part of that day was over once I left the community center. I was wrong. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. I told myself I just needed to double-check a few things. Maybe remove my number from an emergency contact list. Fix a misunderstanding before it got worse. So I started with Harper's Elementary School. The receptionist sounded relieved when I said my name. "Oh, Ms. Morgan, yes. You are listed as primary pickup if the parents are unavailable." Primary pickup. Not emergency contact. Not backup. Primary. I felt my stomach drop. I asked her to send me everything they had on file. Then I called Miles's daycare. Same answer. You are listed as an approved pickup and payment contact. Payment contact. By the time I called Chloe's pediatric clinic, I already knew what I was going to hear. Yes, you are marked as an authorized caregiver for appointments. I had never signed anything. Not once. Within an hour, 3 documents were sitting in my inbox. I opened the first one and saw my name written in a way that almost looked like my handwriting, but not quite. The letters were wrong. The flow was off. It was not a signature. It was an imitation. The second form was worse. Alyssa Morgan has agreed to assist with ongoing childcare support during pregnancy and recovery. Ongoing. That word stayed on the screen like it was trying to sink into my skin. This had never been about one day. They were building a system around me. Quietly. Carefully. Turning my past kindness into future obligation without ever asking me. It felt like finding out someone had taken out a loan in your name. Not just once, but everywhere. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, trying to process how far this had already gone without me noticing. This was not family helping family. This was control, written down and made to look like consent. I did not sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, but because my mind finally understood what I was dealing with. This was not emotional pressure anymore. This had crossed into something structured, something deliberate. So the next morning, instead of calling my family, I called a lawyer. Her name was Rachel Kim. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice clear and focused, like someone used to hearing complicated situations without reacting emotionally. I explained everything. The community center. The note. The documents. The fake signatures. She did not interrupt. She did not question whether I might be exaggerating. When I finished, there was a brief pause, then she said, "You need to stop treating this like a family disagreement. This is a boundary violation with legal implications." Hearing it framed that way changed something inside me. She gave me 3 instructions. Do not meet them alone. Do not discuss anything over the phone unless you can document it. And most important, do not accept responsibility for those children under any circumstance unless you are willing to be legally accountable for everything that happens. Then she said something that stayed with me. People who rely on guilt hate clarity. That is why we are going to make everything clear. By noon, she had drafted a formal letter. It stated that I had never agreed to ongoing childcare. That I did not authorize the use of my name on any documents. And that any attempt to leave children in my care without written consent would be documented and reported. It was calm, professional, precise. No emotion. No room for interpretation. For the first time since that phone call, I felt something close to control return. Not because the situation was over, but because I had finally drawn a line they could not pretend not to see. For 2 days after the letter was sent, everything went quiet. No calls. No messages. No sudden emergencies. It almost felt like it had worked. Then on Wednesday afternoon, while I was preparing for a department meeting, my office phone rang. The receptionist sounded unsure. Alyssa, there is a man in the lobby with 3 children. He says they are yours. For a second, I closed my eyes. Not in shock. Not even in anger. Just in recognition. They were not going to stop. They were just going to change tactics. I walked down to the hospital lobby, still wearing my badge, still holding my notes like I was walking into any other part of my day. Jason stood near the entrance, relaxed, almost confident. Harper, Miles, and Chloe were clustered around him. Chloe's shoe was untied. Miles was coughing. Harper looked like she wanted to disappear. Jason smiled when he saw me. There she is. The aunt who suddenly has no time for family. I kept my voice even. These are not my children. I did not agree to take them. You were sent a legal notice. He laughed and lifted his phone. Say that again. The red light on his screen told me he was already recording. Look at her, everyone, he said loudly. My wife is pregnant and sick, and her sister refuses to help for a few hours. He wanted a reaction. A raised voice. Something he could turn into a story. He forgot where he was standing. This was a hospital. Every hallway had cameras. Every incident had a report. Every action had a record. I turned to the security desk. Please call hospital security and document that he is attempting to leave minors here without consent. Jason's smile faded just slightly. You cannot keep me here. I met his eyes. No, but you cannot abandon them here either. Within minutes, my supervisor arrived. She assessed the situation quickly, then spoke directly to him. This is a medical facility, not a drop-off point. You need to leave with your children now. There was no emotion in her tone. Just authority. Security escorted him out while he argued, his voice getting louder as his control slipped. Harper looked back at me as they left. Confused. Hurt. I wanted to go after her. To explain everything. But I stayed where I was. Because stepping in without boundaries was how this started. And I was not going back there again. That night, the story did not stay inside the hospital. It moved online. Vanessa posted first. A soft video, dim lighting, one hand resting on her stomach, eyes red like she had been crying for hours. Some people forget what family means, she said quietly. When you need them most, they turn away. She never said my name. She did not need to. Within minutes, the comments filled with sympathy. Stay strong, praying for you. Some people are selfish. Then Jason posted his version. A short clip from the hospital lobby, carefully edited. It started after he had already arrived, after the context was gone. It showed me standing there, calm, distant. He added a caption. "This is what happens when success makes people forget where they came from." I watched it once. Then I turned my phone face down. 6 months ago, I would have responded immediately. I would have tried to explain, to defend myself, to correct every lie before it spread. But Rachel had warned me. Do not fight chaos with noise. You will lose every time. So instead of reacting, I documented. I saved the videos. I took screenshots of every post. I downloaded the comments that crossed the line into accusation. Every piece of it became a record. Because the truth does not need to rush. It just needs to be complete. By midnight, my name was being mentioned in messages I was not part of, in conversations I could not control. People were forming opinions based on fragments. And for the first time, I understood something clearly. Silence is not weakness. Sometimes, it is strategy waiting for the right moment. 3 days later, my mother organized a small gathering at church. It was presented as a simple support event for Vanessa. A chance for the community to come together and help a growing family during a difficult time. The theme was written on a sign. Near the entrance. It takes a village. There were soft decorations, a table of desserts, a framed ultrasound photo, and a donation box placed right at the center of the room. By the time I arrived, the story had already been told without me. People smiled at Vanessa with sympathy. They spoke gently to my parents. And when their eyes shifted toward me, there was something else there. Quiet judgment. I stayed near the back for a moment, listening. Jason moved through the room, shaking hands, thanking people for their support. My father stood beside the donation table, speaking with calm authority like everything was under control. Then the pastor stepped forward and began to speak about family, sacrifice, and how sometimes those closest to us fail when we need them most. That was my cue. I walked forward, each step steady, not rushed, not hesitant. Jason noticed me first. His expression tightened. "You need to leave," he said quietly. I did not look at him. I looked at the pastor instead. "May I have 2 minutes before anyone donates?" The room went still. The pastor hesitated, then nodded slowly and handed me the microphone. My voice did not shake. "My name is Alyssa Morgan. I love my nieces and nephew. I have supported them in ways that were never public. School supplies, medical costs, daily needs. I did those things because I chose to." I paused, letting the room settle. What I did not do was agree to become their permanent caregiver without my consent. Vanessa started crying immediately. Jason spoke over me, calling me dishonest. I raised my phone and connected it to the projector behind me. Then I let the documents speak. First, the messages from the night of the dinner. Then the police report from the community center. Then the forms with my name listed as primary caregiver. Then the signatures that were not mine. I did not rush. I did not add emotion. I simply showed each piece, one at a time. The room changed slowly at first, then all at once. Murmurs replaced silence. People looked at each other, unsure of what they had believed just minutes before. One woman stood up and asked Vanessa directly, "Is this true?" Vanessa tried to answer, but the words did not land. The same anymore. Then I showed one final slide. A summary of the financial support I had given over the years. No details about the children, no private information. Just categories and totals. The number was enough. The pastor stepped forward and placed his hand on the donation box. "Until this is clarified, we will not be accepting any contributions today." Jason's composure broke. My parents said nothing. And for the first time, the story stopped being theirs. Because truth, once seen clearly, is very difficult to ignore. The fallout did not happen all at once. It moved in waves. Quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. By Monday morning, the hospital video had reached Jason's workplace. Someone recognized him. Someone asked questions. At first, he tried to explain it away. A misunderstanding. A private matter taken out of context. But documentation does not rely on tone. Within days, his employer reviewed the footage, the incident report, and the fact that he had used company resources to print documents connected to the situation. He was suspended. A week later, he was gone. Vanessa's world shifted differently. Her online presence had always been carefully built. Soft images, thoughtful captions, a picture of motherhood that felt warm and inspiring. But people started asking questions. Not aggressively. Not loudly. Just enough. What about the report? Why was her name on those forms? Why did the story change? Brands pulled back first. Quietly. Then completely. Her comment section closed soon after. My parents felt it in places they did not expect. The church no longer trusted them to organize events. Conversations stopped when they entered a room. The quiet respect they had relied on for years turned into something uncertain. But the most immediate change was simple. They had to manage their own responsibilities. No automatic help. No unspoken backup plan. No one stepping in when things became inconvenient. For the first time, the weight they had been shifting onto me settled back where it belonged. A few days later, my phone rang from a blocked number. My mother. Her voice was strained. Chloe is sick. Miles missed school. Vanessa is overwhelmed. I listened. Without interrupting. Then I said, Jason is home. He can help. There was a pause. Long enough to say everything. We both knew he was there. And for once, I was not the solution they could reach for. Reality had finally arrived. A month later, we sat across from each other in a quiet office that felt nothing like the places where everything had fallen apart. No raised voices. No audience. No performance. Just a table, a mediator, and the truth written in documents no one could reshape. Rachel sat beside me, calm and prepared. Across from us were Vanessa, Jason, and my parents. For once, they were not leading the conversation. They were reacting to it. Jason tried first. He called the documents misunderstandings. Said the signatures were mistakes. That everything had been taken too seriously. Rachel slid the papers forward, one by one. The forms. The messages. The timelines. Then she placed his work email records beside them. The room went quiet. Vanessa shifted next. She said she assumed I would continue helping because I always had before. That I never clearly refused until recently. Rachel responded without raising her voice. Past support does not create future obligation. It was simple. Clean. Impossible to argue with. My mother cried. My father said very little. For the first time, there was no authority in his silence. Just distance. In the end, they signed everything. No direct contact for 12 months. No use of my name on any documents. No unexpected visits to my home or workplace. Jason agreed to cover my legal costs. As the papers were passed across the table, Vanessa looked at me, her voice low. You changed. I met her eyes and answered just as quietly. No. I just stopped being easy to use. She looked away first. And just like that, something that had controlled my life for years finally came to an end. 2 weeks after the mediation, I accepted a job offer in another city. It was not a dramatic decision. There was no long debate, no guilt pulling me back. For the first time, the choice felt simple. I packed my apartment in boxes labeled with things that actually belonged to me. Books. Work files. Kitchen supplies I no longer had to share or replace. When I arrived in Charlotte, everything felt unfamiliar in a way that was almost unsettling. The first morning, I woke up before my alarm out of habit. My body was still expecting something to go wrong. A call. A request. A problem that somehow became mine. I reached for my phone. Nothing. No missed calls. No urgent messages. No pressure waiting to be answered. Just a quiet screen and a normal day ahead. It took time to adjust to that silence. At first, it felt empty. Like something was missing. Then slowly, it started to feel different. Lighter. I went to work and handled situations that actually belonged to my role. I went home without carrying someone else's responsibilities with me. On weekends, I rested without expecting interruptions. I made plans without calculating who might need me to cancel them. There were no sudden demands. No emotional negotiations. No hidden expectations. Just space. And in that space, I realized something I had never fully understood before. Peace does not arrive loudly. It shows up quietly, in the absence of everything that used to exhaust you. Time passed, and the distance made things clearer. Not colder, just clearer. I still thought about the kids. Harper, Miles, Chloe, and the new baby, Ethan. That part of me did not disappear. But the way I showed up changed. I sent birthday gifts through delivery. I contributed to a college fund set up so only they could access it later. When their school recommended extra support, I paid directly for a few counseling sessions. I stayed involved in ways that were intentional, not assumed. What I did not do was step back into the role they had created for me. No last-minute pickups. No emergency calls that became obligations. No quiet expectations waiting to be fulfilled. Their parents handled the daily reality. The schedules, the costs, the stress, the responsibility that had always belonged to them. And slowly, something shifted. Not in me. In them. The urgency to rely on me faded when they realized I would not respond the way I used to. I was no longer the automatic solution. And that did not make me distant. It made my presence honest. Because real care is not measured by how much you sacrifice. It is measured by whether what you give is freely chosen. Sometimes I think back to that night in my parents' backyard. The laughter. The easy assumptions. The moment they decided my life could be reorganized without my permission. At the time, I thought the hardest part would be saying no. I was wrong. The hardest part was standing still while people who benefited from my yes reacted to my no. The disappointment. The pressure. The way they tried to reshape the story so I would look like the problem instead of the boundary. But distance gives clarity. And with time, I started to see the difference between being needed and being valued. Being needed kept me busy. It kept me available. It made me useful. But being valued looks different. It respects your time. It asks instead of assumes. It accepts your answer, even when it is not convenient. What I had before was not respect. It was expectation. And expectation, when it ignores your limits, becomes control. I did not lose my family. I stepped out of a role that was never fair to begin with. The truth is, you can care about people and still refuse to carry what is not yours. You can show up with kindness without giving up your boundaries. And you can walk away from patterns that drain you without becoming a bad person. That is the part no one tells you. Peace is not something others give you. It is something you protect, even when it costs you comfort, approval, and familiar roles. And once you learn that, you do not go back. If you have ever felt like the backup plan in your own family, like your time, your energy, and your life were always expected but never respected, then you understand this story. Walking away is not easy. Setting boundaries is not comfortable. And standing firm when people push back can feel incredibly lonely at first. But the truth is, the people who truly respect you will learn to meet you at your boundaries, not cross them. So if this story spoke to you, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe for more real stories about strength, boundaries, and quiet power. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to say no to people you love just to protect your peace?